This episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, kind of go back and look, comparing apples to oranges, folks. Who was better, DeAngelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart? Before we get into today's content, make sure you subscribe. Doesn't cost anything. Hit that bell notification to be notified of future content like this on the Panthers, the Charlotte Hornets, Carolina Hurricanes, major college sports from both North and South Carolina. Leave me some comments. I love the dialogue. And pound that like button, folks. Okay, folks. Kind of sitting back looking and done some videos on former players. And I just kind of, was looking around at Christian McCaffrey and thinking of what we've had in him in a short time and the highs with him over 2,000 yards in a season and just how incredible talent he's been. And then the disappointment last year when he was hurt and only played in 3 games, still scoring 6 touchdowns, though. And it made me think, who is the best running back all the time for the Carolina Panthers? We go way back on this time, guys like, Deshaun Foster, Tim Biakabutuka, just looking at Stephen Davis that got us to a Super Bowl with Deshaun Foster, Nick Goings, just many, many different players, Fred Lane, and finally landed a premier back in 2006 when the Panthers drafted DeAngelo Williams out of Memphis in the first round. I believe it was pick number 27. And I remember, I went to East Carolina grad. I went to the East Carolina game playing Memphis. I looked at my ex-wife at the time. Ball was on the 50. They handed the ball to DeAngelo Williams. He took off. He was gone. And I looked at my wife, and this was back in like October, and I said, man, Panthers need that guy. And lo and behold, we drafted him. He played for the Panthers from 2006 to 2014. Pro Bowl in 2009 season. He was second team All-Pro in 2008. Now, he was a 2-time NFL rushing touchdown leader. 2008, he had 18 total touchdowns, and that was his double trouble year with Jonathan Stewart. And he also led, when he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2015, he led the NFL in rushing that year as well, touchdown leader. Now, his 9-year career, he played in 117 games for the Panthers, 82 starts. That's impressive. And he had a 4.8 yard per attempt, 6,846 total yards for the Panthers, 46 total touchdowns. Well, 46 rushing touchdowns, 7 receiving touchdowns for a total of 53 total touchdowns. Now, we're going to get out on DeAngelo in a minute because he had some things that went on with his career that he doesn't really link himself with being a Panther. And a lot of Panther fans are not inclined. They don't understand why he's so bitter. Jonathan Stewart. Now, 2 years later, this is a Hurney now. Hurney picks Jonathan Stewart in the 2008 draft. First round pick out of Oregon, 13th pick overall. And he ended up trading a future pick later on to the Eagles for the 19th pick. We picked up offensive lineman Jeff Otah. So it's pretty good. 2008 draft was incredible to get Otah out of Pitt, offensive line. He never developed like we wanted him to, but the few years he played, he was incredible. But Jonathan Stewart was. And he had a 10-year career with Carolina, 2008 to 2017. So 2 years after DeAngelo, but he ends up playing 3 years after DeAngelo leaves. So he played 1 extra year. Now, total of 131 games for the Panthers is what he played. So 14 more. That 1 extra season, you can see, because he had a couple of injury games where he didn't get in. But he only had 64 starts to DeAngelo's 82. And you kind of think, well, if he played for 1 more season and he's got 14 more games under his belt, you'd think that, he'd have more starts. But a lot of that has to do with DeAngelo was the premier back when Stewart was here. And Stewart, we kind of relieved him. The whole thing with double trouble was to run DeAngelo, use his speed, and then when the defense was tired, bring Jonathan Stewart in, and he would bulldoze, and he would pound the rock, and he'd finish wearing the defenses out. But a lot of times there were 1A and 1B when they were on the roster at the same time for the 7 years that they played together. Okay, or it might be 6. I think it was 7 though. Now, he had 7,335 over-yard rushing yards for the Panthers. So, yes, about a little over 500 or less than 500 more rushing yards than DeAngelo, but he had that extra season. Now, he did have 51 rushing touchdowns, which was 5 more than DeAngelo. But like I said, he had the extra year. Same amount of receiving touchdowns, 7, and 58 total touchdowns, which, like I said, it's 5 more touchdowns than DeAngelo had. So the advantage with the amount of touchdowns, the rushing yards, the games played, and total touchdowns all go to Jonathan Stewart. But then again, like I said, he played 1 extra year. Starts goes to DeAngelo Williams. And the yards per average, 4.8 yards for DeAngelo Williams. It was only 4.3 yards for Stewart. Half a yard difference. Now, where I said DeAngelo Williams led the NFL in 2008 in rushing touchdowns with 18, Stewart only had his best years were 2008. Also, he had 10 rushing touchdowns. Double trouble was incredible that year, 28 rushing touchdowns. And in 2009, he had 10 rushing touchdowns. And he made the Pro Bowl in 2015. Now, the thing about Jonathan Stewart, though, he ended his career. He played 1 more year after he left the Panthers. He ended on the good terms with the Panthers. So, there's a couple things you got to keep in mind. They probably would have gotten more rushing yardage, definitely more touchdowns, if it wasn't for a player by the name of Cam Newton. Because remember, like I said, DeAngelo for the Carolina, 46 rushing touchdowns, and you look at Jonathan Stewart, 51 total touchdowns. Remember, Cam Newton, when he left Carolina, had a total of 58 rushing touchdowns as quarterback. And then you got to factor in Cam's rushing yards. Now, he wasn't going to be a 1,000-yard-a-year rusher, but remember his best years, he had 700, 600. He had, where a lot of running back quarterbacks might get a couple hundred yards rushing. He had 600-700-yard rushing years. And, even if you only take a couple hundred yards away, you're giving it to another running back. Maybe DeAngelo has 7,500 yards rushing. Maybe Stewart has 8,000 yards rushing. Total touchdowns for DeAngelo, maybe he's got over 50-some rushing for the Panthers, and Jonathan Stewart has 60. Because a lot of Cam's touchdowns came from the 1, 2, 3 yard line. And a lot of times running backs kind of resent that. You also have to look at the Christian McCaffrey factor. Now, McCaffrey, as we know it, because we're looking at this is 2021. In 2020, he was hurt last year, played a few games. 2019 was a big year. 2018. So you got to go back and look. That was about 2017, I want to say, is McCaffrey's first year. Well, that's also the last year for Jonathan Stewart. So one reason why we can let Stewart go is because McCaffrey's coming in as a rookie and looked really well, looked good. And Stewart even noticed in practice, this guy is incredible. I mean, he was making Luke Kuechly break his ankles trying to cover him in training camp. So DeAngelo was already gone when McCaffrey came. And Stewart was on his way out the door after 1 year. But it's just an interesting thing about it, because DeAngelo would play for 2 years for Pittsburgh. He had 1 year he had looked really good for him. Kind of bitter with the Panthers, considers himself a Steeler, although he played the majority of his career. And I know his mother died when he was a Panther, and I think Greg Hardy was like the only one that went to the funeral. But I kind of beg to differ, because Jerry Richardson was the owner of the Panthers at the time. And Jerry Richardson, he lost a son. And he might have been 40-some years old, but it's still a son. And I don't remember DeAngelo going to that funeral. Now, I'm not saying you don't go to mine, I don't go to yours, but it's kind of hard to get mad at an organization or get mad at individuals, especially when it's off season. Something happens, people have got plans or out of the country, or things are going on, and I didn't see Richardson saying that in the media that certain players didn't go to his son's funeral. But, I mean, I'm not behind the scenes, I don't know. So DeAngelo's kind of bitter. He goes to Pittsburgh, considers himself more of a Steeler. Still bitter with Panther fans. Well, Jonathan Stewart went to New York, played 1 year, retired. He comes back in the fold. Still a Panther guy, still loves the Charlotte area, still follows the team, still really has notable talks with the coaches and players and just people in general, the owner. So it's just a difference in people. That's why I say you're comparing apples to oranges. Who do I compare better? And to highlight that 2008 year, it was hard to go against DeAngelo. 18 rushing touchdowns. He did have more starts. But man, pound for pound, when he was pounding the rock, I mean, I remember games when DeAngelo were getting ready to beat Seattle in their prime, and DeAngelo was caught from behind and fumbled inside the 10-yard line. It was a game we could have won, and we could have used that game for the playoffs to bounce ahead of Seattle probably. Stewart didn't fumble as much, but he did fumble. And Stewart was hard to bring down. But attitude-wise and just a teammate, I think Stewart, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt of being a better teammate and player. But Cam Newton had a lot to factor in with why these two guys didn't have more yards and more touchdowns. And, of course, like I said, Stewart might have stuck around one more year here, but McCaffrey had a lot to do with that as well. And I bring McCaffrey in this because, remember, folks, McCaffrey, if he goes back to what he was a couple of years ago, and he has a 2,000-yard season, or he doesn't even have to have that. Let's just say he has a 1,200-yard rushing season and a 700-800-yard receiving season. If he can get back to where he was and scoring touchdowns as well, and he can do it and keep that momentum going like he did the first few years, McCaffrey may very well pass DeAngelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart as the best running back this franchise ever had. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting. So, folks, what do you think of today's comment? Who did you like better, DeAngelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart? Leave me some comments. Pound that like button. By all means, folks, you know I like the dialogue, so please leave the comments. Hit that bell notification to be notified of future content on the Panthers. And by all means, folks, subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. And we will see you on another edition.